Welcome to another live stream, Legends. Well, guys, although Bitcoin and most of the market saw a little bit of a correction recently, we are also seeing a very quick recovery, honestly. And those of you who were around and able to catch my public live stream yesterday know that I mentioned the possibility for a further pullback for a few reasons, but also some reasons why the bounce was. There was actually a strong possibility that we end up bouncing and retesting the highs, and why I wasn't interested in shorting, even though I was open to the idea of seeing significantly lower levels. Basically, to start things off, because I'm going to jump right into the weekly here right away, but the reason why I was outlining this level down here, obviously it's Stuber Fib. Most of you guys probably at this point who are familiar with my streams know that you can kind of catch these at an eyeball at this point. But just looking at the range, something like that, and just for looking for a little bit of confluence, I like to pull up the Trendmaster indicator and notice that, so we have recently set a higher sell signal. So even though we have this sell signal here, it was a significantly higher one, so it's showing an uptrend. So if you're selling, you're still fighting that trend, right? But just going from where we had this recent buy, I shouldn't even say recent, but when we had this buy signal, I'm just basically pulling this fib from the pivotal point that gave us that little bit of a reversal there. So that also lines up with this. So there was a couple of things lining up with that level down lower, and that ranges from basically 104 to 101,000 US dollars. And really, even if we stay above 98,000, things look very good. I know that would scare a lot of people if we do get that correction. And honestly, I don't know if we're going to. But just showing how much strength is in the market, that if we do see those levels, a lot of the market is going to panic, but that would be a very healthy retracement. Being that there is a lot of FOMO going on right now, and a lot of things with Bitcoin in all-time highs, and a lot of altcoins pumping, all that sort of stuff, there is a lot of FOMO in the space, and maybe we don't get those deep corrections at this point. But again, just outlining it so that if we end up dropping to those levels, that you don't panic too much, because like I said, on the 4-hour, that is just the very large range here since we started breaking some lows, setting lower lows. I was just looking for where did this uptrend start, and that would basically be down here at that 98.2K level. So that's why I have this support mapped out here. Also on the weekly chart, you guys, as far as the structure goes, I have that same fib on the structure on the weekly chart. So after we ended up having our all-time highs here, we got a slightly higher high, and yeah, we got a little bit of a pullback there. But we had new structure confirming this as a higher low around 74.5 thousand. The fact that we set another higher high here at about 123K, that pulls our confirmed higher low. So not just assuming one, right? I'm not considering this, for example, as a higher low. I'm not considering this a bearish break that we lost a higher low, because we didn't confirm another higher high. So this was not a confirmed higher low for me, whereas this one is. But since we set this high here, that confirmed this, that 98.2, 98.1K. That's why I say as long as we stay above that, things are looking good on both the weekly chart and the 4-hour chart. And honestly, there is also that wiggle room, right? If we come back down and test this level, there's even that swing fail possibility down towards 94K. That would be my 115 fib. So I don't necessarily think we're going down to this level, but if it happens, I'm going to be looking for some mega long opportunities at that point, because that'll be a strong level of support, or at least I would hope it would. If we end up losing this, if we end up losing that 94K level, I am going to have very serious concerns about the market once again. But until that happens, things look good. Best case scenario right now is, if we break this high at around 123, if we end up breaking that, we now have new structure to bump that higher low up again, and that would bump it up to about 111.9, $112,000 approximately. That would drastically change the structure of the chart again, right? So that would be something that I'm watching for now on the weekly. On the 4-hour, it would be the same. So as we set those higher highs, that then confirms that higher low structure where you're starting to look for support around those levels if you see some sort of a juicy pullback, right? Like if we end up pumping up here, it's not so much that I want to YOLO longs, into a breakout, but if we get some sort of a pullback to support, I would be heavily looking for long positions on that pullback, because we have that new structure, and coming back to retest support would be super healthy. Again, doesn't have to happen. I'm generally not trading the weekly with leverage anyways. I'm trading shorter time frames, but just looking at structure for what it is, because it doesn't matter to me if I'm looking at a weekly chart, a daily chart, 4 hour, 1 hour, 5 minute, 1 minute, whatever. I treat structure the same. I really don't care about the price on the side. And that's why I have a bad habit too. You guys have probably noticed that I often don't mention price levels. I will say this level here, this level, this fib, whatever, because that's just, as traders, the structure is so much more important than what the price actually is. As soon as you start looking at what the big scary numbers are on the side, you can totally blind yourself into thinking, oh, we can't go below 100K again. Well, if we go below 100K again, nothing has changed. The structure of the chart hasn't changed at that point. So I wouldn't be concerned, whereas a lot of people would be looking into FOMOing shorts right into support. And so that's why I look at structure more so than what the price actually is. So yes, on the weekly, obviously these ranges are very big. Even on the 4 hour, yeah, they're very big. But as we zoom in, we can find that same structure, on shorter time frames as well, right? It's not that the price had to come back here, for example. Notice it's just a classic Stuber fib setup there on Bitcoin on the lower time frames, because we broke structure, right? We had this big, I'm going to call it micro, because it was just the micro trend on the 5 minute chart. But we eventually set this low, a slightly lower low. We broke that. Eventually, yeah, you know what? It did pump a lot higher there, but eventually we came back and retested that support, right? We came back to that 786. So basically what I was looking at on the weekly there, if I was looking for a leveraged position with a tighter invalidation, if this was a 5 minute chart, that's the level that I would be looking to long. It doesn't mean that I necessarily get that position that I want, but just knowing that if we go down to those levels, at least I have a type of setup that I'm looking at, right? Just like right here. So obviously now at this point, blasted right through, easily hit the first and second range targets, and from there I would, that's where you leave half of your position running, so that you're not necessarily just swinging at a home run position, right? Because usually that'll leave you wrecked. But as long as you're taking profits on the way and then letting some run, right? I know a lot of people ask, well, Stu, do you think I should let this position run or should I close it? If I'm ever asking myself that, I'm closing at least a quarter of my position right then and there. And from there, or at least bumping up a trigger stop loss or something to make sure that I do lock in some profits. But that doesn't mean you need to close your entire position, right? That's the beautiful thing about crypto, is you can basically buy and sell whatever small fractions of anything you want. So yeah, that's just kind of how I would be treating something like this. If we do continue to climb here, so actually, sorry, I want to back up a little bit. Let's go back to the 4 hour chart here. The reason why I said at the beginning of the stream that, I just outlined all the reasons why we could still pull back to this support down here. And that would be totally healthy in my opinion. However, the one reason why I don't think we necessarily will is, notice I mapped out this structure here as we set lower lows, right? Because here's where we had in the structure, we had a high, we had a higher high. This was our confirmed higher low because it's the lowest point between the two. And from there we broke it, right? And then we go up a little bit, we recover. A lot of people would be shorting right into that support, right into that swing fail zone. And even though it was short-lived, there was plenty of room to take profits in that range there. But that was still a lower low, right? Because we lost that structure. And from there, we set another lower low. So then we have a confirmed lower high. Guess what happens from there? If you pull it to the structure there, boom, we end up retesting that 786. Perfect short opportunity. Now, I'm not interested in shorting this market, so I did not take that short by any means. But what I'm getting at with this structure here is, here again, we had this little bounce down here. So notice we broke this red line, set a slightly lower low, another lower low, and another lower low. And eventually we broke that. And I outlined this with this green little horizontal line here. That's where our structure broke, right? But rather than buying into that breakout, where that's where a lot of people get wrecked, right? They always want to long into resistance or long into a breakout, but so often you end up getting that pullback, right? So even though we had our bullish signal right here, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's time to long this market right now. That's where I'm waiting for that pullback, and that 786 got tested absolutely perfectly there. So that's just zooming out a little bit. So that's the same structure that I showed here. It's just that, you know, zoomed out on the 4 hour like this. Yeah, it played out beautifully as well, obviously. So the fact that we did break that downtrend, that's the one thing that's making me think maybe we don't get down to this level, right? As structure changed, you know, we just have to be open to all possibilities, basically. So now at this point, obviously that nice safe entry that, well, I shouldn't even call it safe, just that is a trade setup of mine, right? The infamous Stuber-Fib strategy. So that has obviously played out already. So where are we going to go from here? Well, notice I have this purple box up here. I do think that we end up getting up there eventually, since we broke out of our little range here. That would be basically pulling a fib from our all-time highs, right? Where we started this little downtrend. We have to consider the possibility that even if we get a nice little recovery here, we do now technically have resistance up ahead. And that would start at basically 120,000 US dollars again. Anywhere from 120 to 125. This is all fair game for resistance. So just understand, it's not, I am not saying I'm bearish, by the way. Not at all. But what I'm saying is, don't be one of those people that gets FOMO at resistance, right? You don't want to be longing into resistance. You want to buy support and sell resistance. So, I mean, unless you have a strategy that you backtest and you have some sort of breakout strategy that you like to play. But in general, we want to buy support and we want to sell resistance, right? So that's why I have this outlined here. It's, again, not that I'm bearish on the market at all, but I'm also not going to turn a blind eye to resistance. If I saw some shorter time frame setup for a short setup, let's say on the 5 minute as we're in 4 hour resistance, then sure, I might consider looking at a scalp and hopefully catch a running position as more of a hedge, if anything, at that point, right? But we will have to see what happens. I mean, so far, we're just climbing higher as far as this little trend goes on the 4 hour. If we want to chase this structure, I'm actually going to remove this fib here because it's already played out. I'm also going to remove where we got those lower lows. Here is where our structure changed. And yeah, I'm just going to keep array here basically as, what color should I make it? Let's make it blue for now. But that would basically be on this micro trend, and by micro trend I just mean, you know, since this swing started on the 4 hour basically, this would basically be where we recently ended up finding support and creating a new high on this trend, right? So I don't really want to see us lose that. If we lose that, well, then technically we still have this fib, because although it played out once there already, since we set new highs, this range is actually a new setup, right? We haven't tested, although it looks like we tested the 786, 886 pocket, this was not the same when we were trading back there. So now if we come back to this level, you know, that's a point where I would consider taking a stab at a long on this market again. Something like that if we saw a pullback into there. If that ends up breaking, which is very possible because of all the reasons that I outlined, I mean, if we start dropping these lows, the bottom of our current reversal, I see no reason why we wouldn't drop down closer to 104,000 at that point. Obviously don't have to. Maybe we get some sort of structure break like this once again. You know, maybe we see something like this where we don't quite make it, but we end up getting a break like that and then getting another long opportunity a little bit early rather than waiting for that, right? But until there was some sort of structure break like that, I wouldn't really be interested. But so far, yeah, this support box, this would be basically starting back around 113,000. If I actually pull a fib, where would invalidation would basically be below 110.8 thousand. At that point, we would be losing the 115 of our current micro support here. So as long as we're above that, things look fantastic for an early reversal. If we lose that, I think things on the macro scale still look absolutely beautifully, and I'm not worried about where this market is at this point of the cycle. Before I look at altcoins, I just want to take a look at Bitcoin dominance. Those of you guys who have been in my streams for the last month or two, you'll know that I was calling out that we had this diagonal trend line with 3 perfect touch points and then flipped that support to resistance absolutely perfectly and absolutely dumped off a cliff. And that's when we started seeing altcoins pump in, right? All of a sudden, Ethereum made it all the way up to macro resistance. Solana hasn't yet, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But this thing actually absolutely dumped off of a cliff. And guys, I know I've said this in my last few streams, so just in case you haven't been around, this is a beautiful divergence to see when we see Bitcoin dominance dropping while the price of Bitcoin is holding strong, right? I mean, yeah, maybe there's some people out there who are scared and think we topped just because we corrected a little bit, but this trend is still very much strong. Bitcoin is still holding above its all-time highs. I mean, look where we came down to from this all-time high to where we found support. That's a perfect support resist or resist support flip. Absolutely beautiful right there. That makes perfect sense to see that kind of a reaction from that. So to see Bitcoin holding above all-time highs with the Bitcoin dominance dropping off a cliff, that's a very good sign for the altcoin market, right? I mean, I was very vocal about the fact while I was cautiously bearish on Bitcoin when we did reapproach the macro resistance when it was back at like 110 to 114K. I had mentioned that I was selling some of my Bitcoin at that point, but I was diversifying most of that into altcoins like Ethereum, Solana, some microcap meme coins and stuff like that. Because even if Bitcoin would have been topping out at this level here and it was going to dump off a cliff, still typically at the end of a bull market, we still see altcoins get kind of their finale run, basically. And that's when Ethereum was more so just breaking out and breaking above $2,000. I thought at that point, even if it is near the end of the cycle, I would still expect coins like Ethereum especially to end up testing their macro resistance again. And notice where we're trading right now. We got above this 886. Actually, I'm going to go to an older chart. Bitstamp has a little more data here. So we are just below the absolute macro resistance. We're basically right below the 786. If we pull this fib from all-time highs around 48.80 USD down towards 860 USD, that's a massive range there. And notice we are getting to that 786. Now, something that's really exciting about this, you guys, is that, I mean, I often say this, I only really like playing those fib setups on the first test, because if we keep testing those levels, they typically get weaker and eventually they break. I mean, look how many times we've tested this 786 at this point. 1, 2, 3, and these moves played out, right? Each one of these Stuber setups actually played out, which is crazy that on the weekly. That's why I say, right? Structure, right? A lot of people thought when we were testing this resistance that, we're going all-time highs, and to think anything differently would be absolutely silly. These all played out, right? We tested the 786. We came down to the first target, the 0.5 fib. Tested the 786, hit the 0.5 fib. Tested the 786, hit the 0.5 fib and the 214 fib. And you guessed it, the 214.
Honey, what does fib mean?
Fibonacci sequence.
Yes, the Fibonacci sequence. It's a very common trading tool that's used among swing traders, scalpers, you name it. It's one of my favorite tools that I use. But yeah, basically these numbers and this strategy specifically is one that I talk about in this channel quite a bit, or in this Discord, and what I like to teach people just because it's a strategy that I've used so long. But for those of you who aren't familiar with this strategy, so the reason for the 214 as one of my fibs, just to show you what I mean, is if we show the style, you can pick your own numbers, right? I really like the 786, 886. My targets are the 0.5 and the 214. And my reason for the 214 is let me put that back up. The 214 down here as the shorting target is actually the reverse 786 almost perfectly, right? I can erase the old one and notice that that basically brought us down to the 786 perfectly, and notice where we see that reversal, right? So again, a lot of people got very bearish at this level, just like they got very bullish at this level. But that's very common, and that's why I always say, you know, the way the market looks, I mean, everything looks strongest at resistance. Everything looks weakest at support. We know deep down we're supposed to buy support and sell resistance, but it's so hard to actually do when the time comes until you've done it enough. But yeah, that's a very common feeling, to want to basically long into resistance and short into support. But these fibs really kind of help stay level-headed about that sort of thing, because it's just, there's no guesswork, right? It's just, as long as you know how to pull them and you know what structure breaks to look for and whatnot. When you have your range pulled there, you already have your entries there, you have your targets there. It takes the guesswork out of, is this going to play out or not? I'm super worried about it. You know, you can set your targets and walk away from the trade, kind of a thing. Now, that being said, as I was just talking about, I don't typically like to long into resistance, but I feel differently about this right now. This looks very strong to me because we have tested this resistance so many times. Right? 1, 2, 3, and this is our 4th time coming at that 786 Fibonacci. So I have a feeling, especially with, you know, Bitcoin dominance still even looking like it's selling off even during this stream here, very good for the altcoins in my opinion. So yeah, I am, for probably a couple months now, even when I was bearish on Bitcoin as we were approaching this level, you know, I made it very clear that I was far more bullish on altcoins at that point, just because of the phase of the cycle that we're at this point, being, you know, Bitcoin smashed all-time highs and stuff like that. You know, I feel very differently about altcoins now than I did, you know, half a year ago, for example. Typically speaking, I think most altcoins are shitcoins, and Bitcoin is the one coin that I truly have faith in overall. But I will absolutely trade these other coins and buy them and hold them for periods and whatnot, because there's certain times when they just far outperform Bitcoin, and that's kind of the stage of the cycle that we're at right now, in my opinion. So yeah, Ethereum looking great. Hype also looking great. Notice we had another bullish super fib here, got very close to the 786 there. So same thing, right? On this trend, we saw this little correction here, but notice we had this high. We had a higher high. I'm pulling the fib from the lowest point between the two, right? High, higher high. Lowest point between the two is our higher low. And notice that same thing, right? So many people would have been longing the shit out of this breakout, hoping for a big breakout and just assuming it has to happen. But realistically, it was the first time testing above this level. We come back and retest support, and getting in at that 786, again, just a beautiful type of a setup. Just beautiful level of support to watch for. And that's why I say that, you know, even things like the Bitcoin weekly, even if we drop significantly lower, there's those bullish setups just waiting around the corner. They just might take a little while to play out, basically. So hype at this point on the 4 hour looking great. If I bring up the trend master, so notice we did have a sell signal on the Trendmaster 4 hour. However, again, it's a significantly higher sell signal. So we just have higher trending sell signals and higher trending buy signals. So at this point, it makes sense that we would end up flipping this blue line into a pink one and flip to buy. If that happens, that would just be another great little bit of confluence for my bullish theories that, yeah, it just looks like there's a strong uptrend at that point. There would just be that additional confluence from one of the indicators. AI charting tools. So we did, let me get rid of a few things here just to clean things up. Let's bring up the AI charting tools. So notice we did get these overlapping supply zones, which also known as resistance. We were setting some lower highs, lower low, lower high. But now recently, since we had this little bit of a reversal here, notice that we're starting to see overlapping demand zones, these green boxes, so basically support. So although it's a very skinny one here, we did get some overlapping, so that is showing that there was some demand going on around this level. So basically the middle of this range, right? And obviously this recent green box, this little skinny guy that's overlapping the bigger one, that is the most recent box that this indicator has printed. These ones, obviously there's a bunch of them, but we're going to start building some support below us as we trend higher at this point. So again, there's obviously resistance ahead, but so far, just where we found support and everything with my 4-hour fibs, it's just, and honestly, just with hype being in price discovery, right? It obviously broke all-time highs a long time ago. And note, actually, there's another bit of confluence, right? From our old all-time highs from the immediate launch. Look where we ended up finding support. Perfect resist support flip. So just another thing lining up with that, right? So being it's in price discovery, I mean, hype still looks just fantastic to me. Solana, this is one that I wanted to talk about. There's been a couple Stubers recently. I'm just going to erase this one because it's a little bit old. So my recent one did play out, hit a couple of my targets, still have a little bit running. I'm actually looking to add some more positions, or just adding to my position, I suppose, if we end up seeing another pullback, because again, we've obviously broke our highs. So at this point, I have this as a confirmed higher low, and that's where I'm going to pull my fib from. So it doesn't really matter how high we go. I'm just going to keep chasing the price until we get some sort of a pullback, right? So this is only on the 5-minute, but that would bring Solana back down to about 168.70, somewhere in there. I don't know if we're going to pull back to that level. I mean, as far as my current long position goes, I hope it just keeps running. But if we see one of those pullbacks, that's kind of the next scalp opportunity that I can see on the 5-minute, basically. Same thing, right? Talking about the trending indicators, obviously we just see a series of higher buy signals, other than this one, this little mishap here. But then we invalidated the sell signal very quickly, flipped that resistance into support. But yeah, overall, just a beautiful trend of upward trending buy signals. So as long as we're holding that, I mean, this trend on hype, even on the 5-minute, just looks fantastic at this point. ALGO master, not catching anything there. Okay. Yeah, no. Solana, another thing I wanted to talk about actually is if I zoom out. As I was talking about earlier, that, Ethereum got up to macro resistance. Before that, it was Bitcoin had got up to macro resistance. So basically, we see some coins starting to take turns. And so since Bitcoin smashed all-time highs, Ethereum ended up pumping from like $2,000 since that all the way back up to $4,000 up to macro resistance. Solana hasn't got back up to its macro resistance yet. So if I zoom out on the 4-hour a little bit, you can see where I have this fib pulled from. Maybe some of you guys remember this was just that was all the way back in January, hey, when Solana hit right around $300. So basically I pulled a fib from there and down to where we had bottomed out around $96. And since the Bitcoin and Ethereum have done it, Solana has a lot of people using it, and it's another one of those big names in crypto, and I see no reason why it wouldn't end up retesting its basically its macro resistance, and that starts at about $250. So that's $75 higher than we are right now. Obviously, if we just enter a bear market right now, we probably won't get that 45% pump to the upside. But honestly, we have to see what happens, right? Maybe we end up breaking out even higher. Who knows? It's just that's kind of where I'm looking at for resistance, and why I assume that Solana is on its way to that 250 to 275 would be the 886 fib. Double top would be around 297. And then we have that liquidity grab zone up to my 115 fib. So there's still room for some sort of a swing fail if we just pump above the highs and lose it again right away. I would love to short the retest on something like that. But as it goes right now, basically anywhere from 250 to 326 is fair game for resistance, but I see no reason why we wouldn't get up to that 786 around 250. So that's honestly one of the reasons why I'm mostly trading Solana recently, is just because I really have this feeling that we are going to fill that price action and end up hitting those targets. And if that happens, I'm trading the 5 minute, but I'm leaving some of my position run, as I always do, hoping to catch a running position. And, you know, if I'm in a long from, well, currently $168, if I end up running that all the way to 250, I'm going to be very happy about it, right? So, like I said, I've been taking some profits off it as a scalp already, but if I catch that runner, fantastic. And that's exactly why I'm trading Solana so much recently, is because I do think it's only a matter of time until one of those scalps turns into a beautiful runner. I also want to take a look at a few shitties, a few meme coins. I know not everybody's into meme coins, but honestly, meme coins have basically been the majority of my trading recently, just in spot. I think in the last 2 months, my meme coin wallet's up like 1200% or something. A big part of that is because of Troll. Several of you guys may have been in some of my streams. Even a couple months ago, I was warning about Troll a little bit, because we had this Stuber fib back here, right? I had the fib pulled. We ended up breaking this. So notice we had this low, a slightly lower low. I know that's microanalyzing. That's how I pull these fibs. But we end up coming back down to that fib pocket. I was loading up on Troll down there. And all of a sudden, the other day, it absolutely took off. And you know what? Looking back, I really should have thrown way more money at it. Don't get me wrong; it was a beautiful position. But looking back, Trollface is basically the OG meme. I mean, that I can't think of a more popular meme over the years or decades at this point. You know, it only made sense that, you know, if we're looking for new money, we're looking for that new retail to get into the space and that sort of thing. I mean, Trollface is one of those memes that you don't need to explain it to your friends or your family. They just get it. It's like, oh, of course that's a meme coin, right? Yeah, sure. You know, not saying that buying it's necessarily the best idea at this point, but you know, it's just one of those ones that I do see potential in that one. And I really should have thought that over a little more when I saw that. Also with the trend master indicator, nothing on the daily, but it was the 4 hour when we get a higher buy signal, right? So often when you see this for the first time, I'm just going to remove my fibs there to make it a little cleaner. But notice for the first time on this chart, when we end up printing that sell signal, and although it doesn't really look like it, notice where my crosshairs are, that next sell signal is slightly higher. And then we get that followed up by a higher buy signal. And so often when you see that on newer coins and you get that for the first time, it leads to very big moves. And just look how we held this buy trend ever since that. So, I mean, this thing's been on an absolute moon mission. Let me just rewind here. I want to remove those indicators. Like, since we were testing that 886, what is that? That's, I mean, where we currently are, it's up about 14x. It topped out at about a 19x from there. Absolutely huge. I do have a 10x long position open from 9 cents as well. What's it currently sitting at? I know yesterday it had hit over 1,000%, and that was in basically 1 day. That was a nice one. Currently sitting at a 603% profit on the remaining 2/3 of that position. So yeah, Troll is one that, you know, that's a meme coin that has my interest. I'm not saying this is the kind of rally you want to buy into. I'm sorry, like, if you weren't in my streams where I was talking about this, you know, a couple months ago, I think is when I was talking about this. Yeah, now the train has left the station and it gets a little bit risky. But buying pullbacks, I mean, as long as there's a bull market, I think this one will do well. You know, looking at the market cap versus how active the community is. I mean, the troll community on social media is basically just as active as other coins that have 20 to 50 times the market cap. So it is getting a little higher. Now we have a $157 million market cap. When I was talking about it back here, it was, I think, between 10 and 15 million. Currently 157, but I mean, there's so many meme coins that reach the billions. I have a feeling this one is going to do it this cycle, but again, YOLO buying the top is obviously risky, because even days like today, I mean, this little pullback here, basically from where we got to the top to the next day here, we ended up wicking down 40%, right? This thing is incredibly volatile, but those are the kind of dips that, if anything, I'm looking at buying those. You know, as far as adding to my meme coin bags, this is one that I only want to add on nice pullbacks like that. But yeah, I think that one has potential. Another one that, actually, and before I go any further, I also wanted to bring up this. So the ALGO Master using the Bollinger Bands. So notice that we had it squeezing here. And when we ended up getting our breakout candle, that was a big warning sign as well, because also these Bollinger Bands opened up so much. Now, when the bands spread out like that, it's not necessarily saying that it has to go higher, but it's implying that there is some heavy volatility incoming. And the fact that we broke out of that range to the upside, from there we've just been hugging the top of this range the whole climb up. So yeah, eventually there's going to be some sort of a pullback, but that's actually a strategy my dad taught me recently. Interesting breakout strategy, so I was showing him that one as well. So always learning, guys. So many different strategies out there, but yeah, that was one that lined up with it when I started adding to my position at that point. Even though we were going higher and we had done several X's, I was still adding in down here because I had that breakout confirmation. And that brings me to the next coin here, Cat with Mask. This one is significantly earlier, maybe not even earlier, just it hasn't taken off like that. But I did notice a few things about this recently. Now, same thing, I was actually buying this. We had this fib here, so I was actually buying this one a while back too, but I actually added to my position today, right before doing this stream. I added to this position yesterday for several reasons. One of those reasons being they also have an active community on social media. The market cap is quite low yet. I think it's around a $17 million market cap, if I'm not mistaken. And just the technicals, right? Looking at the 4 hour here. So although we had this sell signal on the trend, notice we ended up breaking that and even flipping that resistance into support. And ever since that, well, even before that, we're holding this buy trend, right? So at this point, we have a beautiful trend showing up on the 4 hour here. And as well, I believe it was the daily, much like, so we obviously don't have enough data yet for the trend master. I think it was the ALGO Master. Yeah, notice we're seeing those bands split open again. So we're getting that increased volatility. And so far, although we don't have as clean of a breakout on those bands, we are still hugging the top of that band. And actually, I want to bring up the other, actual Bollinger Bands indicator and remove the ALGO Master. And you can actually see that breakout a lot clearer just because it's a smaller band. But same thing with that breakout strategy, right? We got that candle close, we got the band spreading open and a daily close above that. I mean, just a beautiful, even right now, we're breaking above that band again. I mean, that's just such a strong sign of volatility. And the fact that it's hugging the upside like that, I think this one looks good. I mean, obviously do your own research, form your own opinions, but this is obviously not financial advice. Meme coins are very dangerous. They are, no matter how confident I am about this, I treat them like gambles. I'm obviously not going as heavy as I would into things that I trust a lot more, like Bitcoin and stuff like that. But I'm willing to trade these memers and take the risk on positions like this, because this is starting to look a lot like how Troll did. I don't think the meme ability is quite as impressive, let's say, as Trollface is. However, that being said, so far the technicals are there, and I think it looks juicy. Another one, I've mentioned this one many times in the Micro Gems chat. IQ 6900, and same thing is that we are flirting with a Stuber fib. We've just been consolidating in this range for a very long time. I know they're still building. They're fairly active on social media and stuff like that. They have some interesting products. Whether or not they're game changing, I don't really care. It's a meme coin. And it's at support. That's really what it comes down to for me. And I did good on this one, on this earlier pump. I don't know, Rocket, are you in here? Rocket is not in here, but I know he put this on my radar back in the day, and I think we both basically caught this move. So I'm, hopeful it'll happen again this time round. No promises, but yeah, again, just that it's chilling at support, building that structure. As long as we don't lose this range, things still look pretty good. And just where the market's at this point, I think this one's like a $2 million market cap, 2.5 million, I believe. So very low. Understand too, guys, check out, like, when they're a very low market cap, a lot of times they have very low trade volume as well. And if you're just going to market buy with size, I mean, you're going to cause a bunch of slippage on yourself. So consider that, if they're a small micro cap like that, consider if it's even something that you have the risk appetite for. Obviously, I'm not telling you what to do. But if it is something that you want to buy, then just don't ape all in with big size, because you might regret that and cause crazy slippage on yourself. Like, I typically buy in smaller batches just to accumulate. Bringing up the Trendmaster indicator. Was it the 4-hour? Yeah, the 4-hour. So same thing, right? We had lower trending sell signals, lower trending buy signals. However, recently here, we actually invalidated this, right? This would have been our last sell signal, because that's where we got our pivot before pushing lower. But we ended up breaking it here. So although we did, we did retrace, we did print another sell signal, but it is a higher sell signal. So at this point, I would love to see this blue line flip pink, and especially that we found support at my macro support level. I would now love to see us get a higher buy signal. I think that would show a lot of strength with this. So yeah, again, guys, I know meme coins aren't for everybody, but some of us like the micro caps, some of us like the Solana casino, like that risk appetite, and like that high risk, high reward type of setup, right? So to each their own. Bitcoin on the lower time frames, still climbing here, guys. Trendmaster indicator, same thing, right? Higher trending buy signals. Look at this. Like, this is why I love this strategy of just looking for that confluence, looking which way these are trending. I mean, it's easy to, let's say, turn off these indicators and say, well, yeah, it's obviously an uptrend. But it's very hard to notice the reversal of those. And sometimes this will help you catch that sort of a thing, right? Because same thing back here, right? We had lower trending sell signals for a little bit, but then all of a sudden, oh, hey, we broke that level, got a higher sell signal, got a higher buy signal. What happens? We start trending to the upside. So it's not always going to play out perfectly like that, especially as ranges get tighter. Then you're going to see it chop around a lot more. But when you see those ranges, and when you see that reversal of, corresponding signals, right? The sell signals and the buy signals change directions like that, it's often a very early warning sign that things could take a deep plunge. Even actually one that I want to bring up to you, because I noticed it yesterday and accumulated a little bit of troll with it. I never sold much. I was going to sell a bunch to accumulate a whole bunch more. Never did. But something I noticed was the Trendmaster on the 5-minute. And look at this, guys. Look at this beautiful trend that we had. And right here, we print a lower buy signal followed by a lower sell signal. And what did we end up getting from there? We ended up dumping about 26% from that. And that's just a 5-minute signal, you guys. But this was your early warning sign that things may reverse a little bit. Now, we did take out this this sell signal reversal here. We are literally just taking that out. And as well, we have a higher buy signal. So now we're starting to see some strength come into the market on trolling the market, if you will. But yeah, whether it's, looking for confluence in your positions, that's just often something I'll use is, hey, I'm antsy to get into a long position right now, for example. But you know what? We have the sells and the buy signals trending to the downside on the lower time frames. So maybe I'll at least wait for a reversal on that with the 1 minute or the 5 minute or whatever before looking for those long positions, right? So it's right in the name, you guys, right? The MDX Trend Master. It's very good at spotting a trend like this. And my settings with it, so that's the Trend Master indicator. The way I have it set up, there is actually a preset here, StuTube Trading, that will make it automatically look like mine. Unfortunately, you can't change anything with it. There's a few things that I would like to tweak, but it is what it is. But that's how I've been using it personally. What exchange do I use for Troll and Cat with Mask? I use my Phantom wallet for that, and I was just swapping straight on the Phantom wallet. I never connected to another exchange or anything. Trading Troll with leverage I did on MEXC. Now, I typically don't like trading on MEXC all that much. I don't like having much money on there. To each their own. Me personally, I have my concerns. But yeah, I did have a little bit in an old account basically, and decided I should play with Troll because that's the only place that I can see it with leverage basically. But yeah, as far as spot trading, I usually do it straight off my Phantom wallet for meme coins. I have been loving more and more trading, especially, well, just spot more so, but trading on DeFi like that, trading Solana memers and stuff like that. It's so nice not being limited to what one exchange is willing to carry. Just generally better volume, earlier charts, earlier ability to get into them, all that sort of stuff. Again, I'm not saying meme coins are for everybody by any means. But so often when I'm looking to spot buy stuff, I love looking at those kinds of wallets instead, just because you're not limited to such a small amount of coins. What else? Like I said, we have the Bollinger Bands splitting apart like that. I want to take a look at the 4 hour for Cat with Mask. So notice kind of same thing down here, right? They were squeezing together, and then they expanded like that, showing that volatility was coming, and we started just hugging the top of that range. Now, it's not always going to play out perfectly like that, and on the shorter time frames, I've watched it a little bit and even played with it a little bit. I've won some, lost some trying that on the lower time frames, but it seems like the 4 hour and the daily and longer time frames like that, so often seeing very nice moves, and especially when it's lining up with the Trend Master, for example. Like back here, yeah, they split apart a little bit, but we still had this sell signal here, right? For the most part, we were chilling below resistance. Even as we got up here, we still had this blue sell trend from... Oh, actually, there was no sell signal, but it was bearish pressure with that blue line there. But now that we got that expansion and we have that buy signal below us, I mean, that's a beautiful trend to see right now. And those bands, I'm using the ALGO master for those. And where is that? Bands. I have Bollinger Bands and also filled with order flow. So it just shows when some buy volume or sell volume kicks in or whatever. Also with the ALGO Master, you guys, there is auto fibs and there is auto Stuber fibs, right? So understand that this tool can be helpful when looking for confluence. However, it can be misused a little bit, because if you don't know how to actually pick up the setups, they may have already played out. They may not be valid anymore because sometimes it takes a while to refresh, just like right now. Let me just turn the bands off just to make this a little bit cleaner. Remove this here. So notice that this setup did play out, right? So notice the auto fibs picked this as a range. This was the high. This was the low. Has laid out. You would have hit 3 entries, the 786, the 886, and the 1. You would have got 3 laddered entries there, and we at least hit the first target, the 0.5 fib, right? We got very close to the second target. Hard to say, everyone's going to play it differently, obviously, but it did at least hit the first target there. But at this point, this fib's obviously no longer any use to us because it's already played out and we've broke through it. But yeah. Let me just reload this here. Oh, I changed charts by accident. There we go. Back to normal. So yeah, basically, guys, as far as meme coins goes, I think this cat with mask looks pretty good. And guys, understand, I have a hard time doing this. I hate to be the guy who's shilling things. Understand that I have no connection to any of this, and the only reason I'm talking about it is just because I like the structure and I recently bought some more of it. And I know a lot of people in here do like looking at the micro caps and the meme coins and stuff. So yeah, especially when they are on trading view like that and we have access to the MDX algo indicators like this. I mean, that's just an added bonus for us. So yeah, that's looking beautiful. Just holding this buy trend absolutely beautifully. Solana, I want to take a look and babysit my position a little bit. So we have gone a little bit higher. I am going to remove that. I'm just going to bump the fibs up slightly because we've just trended a little bit higher, right? So as the price climbs, my range is going to get bigger. If we end up doing something like this, well, then I'm going to be pulling a fib from here to here, basically, right? As structure totally changes like that, then I can totally change where I'm pulling my fib from. But at this point, this is my current pivotal point. Sorry guys, I gotta catch up on the chat a little bit. I see that I missed a couple earlier. Rab, I took a Ethereum long on the 4-hour Stuber. Where is a good spot for a hedge short? Me personally, I don't see a good hedge short anymore, just for what I was talking about with Ethereum earlier, that, you know, if this was our first time testing this resistance pocket, I would 100% be hedging shorts in this area. The fact that this is our fourth time testing this macro resistance, I'm not as interested in a hedge short at this point, unless you're looking for a shorter time frame confluence, something like that. But at this point, I would be very hesitant to be looking for a short. I mean, let me zoom in a little bit here. 4-hour. Let's put it this way. It's possible we get a rejection here because we lost this structure. Yeah, actually, I see. So either way, we lost this structure. And if we pull a fib, something like so, I mean, obviously we're in double top territory, which also the 115, ooh, thunder. The 115 lines up with the macro 786. So if you were looking for a tight invalidation setup, I mean, you could be looking to ladder in shorts here with invalidation just above that 786. Me personally, I'm not interested in shorting this market right now. Especially the fact because this, so Stuber fibs, this is one thing that only people very familiar with them would even catch. But notice that I outlined a little bit of different structure here. I would feel very different about this resistance right now as well if we didn't have this price action. As silly as that sounds and as minuscule of a change that is, if we just went straight from here and ended up going up here, I would absolutely consider a short at that point, just because it would be a very clean break in structure, right? We would set a lower low, or we would at least lose the higher low. And so we would have this, and then that would be our first retest, which I would have a hard time not swinging at that, to be honest. However, we have since set another lower low, right? This is micro analyzing, but we have these two lower lows, and that has been broken. So the fact that we may have already broken that downtrend that we did have on the 4 hour, so at this point I feel a little bit different about this Stuber. And I know, again, it's not saying that it can't play out, it's just an added risk factor. And again, I know that it looks like that's barely any change in the structure of the chart, but how I look at Stuber fibs, it is a slight difference. And again, sometimes I'll still play them, but there's an added risk factor there. I generally use smaller positions if I was swinging on something like that, just because it's a little riskier. So that's why I know a lot of people have probably heard me say in previous streams where I'll be like, oh yeah, this is such a clean structure break because it's just kind of broke structure and then got the retest perfectly. This is one of those times where it's just not a clean structure break because we've set more structure and then invalidated it, right? So this is actually, it's more bullish to me, the fact that we had both of these, than if we would have just had this lower low. I would be much more cautious right now if we went straight back up here. Might be something that a lot of people who look at Stuber fibs don't even know that I look at. That's more of the advanced Stuber course, let's say. Yeah, I agree, Adrian. Well, like I just said, not really interested in shorting yet. Yeah, wait for all-time highs. I could totally see us going there. Just, again, the fact that we've been just trading up towards that resistance, I see no reason why we would fail at the 786 a fourth time. Anything can happen. Resistance is resistance until it breaks. I just wouldn't have much confidence in it at this point. As my old buddy Sammy Loyals drilled it into my head years ago, if you are tapping away at a cinder block wall with a hammer, eventually the cracks are going to appear and eventually it's going to crumble. It's not that the first hammer swing is going to do it, but if you keep tapping away, typically will. And this is one of those times that this is our fourth time that we're starting to tap away, right? So and also, somebody had mentioned, was that Adrian? I think that was on your Twitter this morning, or X, whichever you prefer, that you mentioned that there was more Bitcoin outflows and more Ethereum inflows for the ETFs.
And yes, you like that, eh?
Yeah, I did like that. I even shared it.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, and I think they're looking at it the same way I am, right? Just for the stage of the cycle that we're at. It's not that they're bearish on Bitcoin by any means, but they know what happens at this stage of the cycle when, you know, Bitcoin dominance is dropping, Bitcoin's at all-time highs, altcoins are starting to break structure. I mean, if you look at, I know this is one that I looked at quite a while ago with you guys. I think it was on the daily. Yeah, it was totally on the daily. But I was looking at this, the Ethereum versus Bitcoin chart. That was another reason why I got more bullish on altcoins than with Bitcoin. I even had that that alert set on this line when we ended up breaking it, and then also broke that horizontal resistance. I mean, it was a straight moonshot, right? This is when Bitcoin was trading at around 110,000 or somewhere in there, and I think Ethereum was around $2,000 and breaking out. And that was another thing that was leading me to believe that, you know, Bitcoin hit its not all-time high resistance, just its macro resistance. Just another reason why I thought Ethereum would be next, because Ethereum broke out versus Bitcoin. And guys, the thing is, Bitcoin was doing very well, right? It's not like Bitcoin was doing going to shit and Ethereum started outperforming it. Bitcoin was doing very well at this time, but Ethereum was doing significantly better. I mean, from, what would that be, April 22nd? Since April 22nd, Ethereum has outperformed Bitcoin by basically 90%. And that's with Bitcoin doing very well. So that just goes to speak volumes for the strength of the altcoin market right now. Even look where we are right now. We just broke structure again on the daily chart 12 minutes ago. got a daily close above this. Yeah, we could retrace, but we've set beautiful new structure, right? So we have a new higher low right here. As we break structure, we start to we can move our higher lows up, and currently we're at that green line. There would be our higher low. Once Bitcoin versus Ethereum loses a higher low, then I will have my concerns about the altcoin market as well. Now, to be fair, that did happen back here. It was short-lived and we started pumping again, but you know, sometimes you're going to see that happen. But as it stands right now on this trend, we just broke new structure. Like I said, this was less than 15 minutes ago when we had this daily close. And again, just Ethereum looking significantly stronger than Bitcoin right now. That pains me to say because I don't always love Ethereum. It has treated me pretty poorly in the past with fees and stuff like that last cycle. It's a love-hate relationship, but it is what it is. You know, it's looking great. And that's why I've been also, you know, mostly trading Solana, but also trading Ethereum and Hype a little bit. Speaking of that, what's Solana doing on the 5-minute here? So kind of the same thing even on this little micro trend, right? Solana still holding this little micro trend. Got our high, higher low, confirmed higher low. Yeah, we got a little wick below that. And guys, this is, I talk about micro analyzing a lot, but this is really the microest of analyzing. We can even look at something like this, right? Notice the same thing. If we just pull this range, like I always say, structure is structure, however you want to look at it, whatever time frame. Notice that this played out, right? We ended up hitting our 786, our 886, our 1. Depending where your fourth order was, you may have even hit all 4. Obviously, this is a small range and not everyone's going to play that. But notice that we ended up testing that support, grabbing all this, and then, boom, 0.5 fib, working our way towards the 214 fib. So as you start to see structure this way, you just see it more and more, right? You just can't unsee it. You start to, I used to always joke about this. I haven't in a while, but you see it everywhere. You look at buildings, you start to see a 786, 886 building heights, tree heights, your friends' heights, your family members' heights. You know, you just start to notice these Fibonacci sequences in your day-to-day life when you get so used to looking at things in such a way. Maybe that's the tism speaking. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but you know, doesn't really matter. This, I mean, if you're pulling a really small range like this and you go to long something here and you're not willing to take profits till up here and you get stopped out and you say, oh, that strategy sucks. Well, that's just user error and you pulled too small of a range, right? But there's always smaller ranges inside bigger ranges, etc., etc. And this is one of those examples of very small range, but it's still technically played out. We hit our 0.5 fib, right? It's very common to see that sort of a thing. Even if it's just a couple candles, you just see things retested so much when you start getting used to looking for those retests, right? Bitcoin dominance still dropping great for the altcoins. So far, Troll looking like it wants to hold that resist support flip. I would love to see that. Do I need to buy some more? Oh, that long is up 720% now. God, that's volatile. What's Cat with Mask doing? Yeah, that's also been climbing. Perfect. Sorry guys, just give me a sec. Just looking through some memers on the old phone here.
In the meanwhile, I'm going to add to the outflow what we was talking about just a second ago. So, just a reminder. Yeah, the Bitcoin outflow. just a reminder, like if so far the ATFs are starting to outflow, that doesn't mean we're gonna turn around straight ahead. We still have bullish momentum right now in us. We
Yes.
didn't do a bigger breakout from it. So if and only if you're gonna want to short big time something, that's gonna be Bitcoin in the first place, right? The cycle will end first with Bitcoin, then the rest will follow before we're gonna have the ALTCOINS. But the thing is, as well, when Bitcoin start to crumble and do the really big retest or break to the downside, that's gonna be heavy, and
Yes.
there is not gonna be.
Sorry.
You want to know what I mean? Just look up the previous bull cycle and see how that ended. Either way, on a daily, you never had the retest at all. We just dumped it, and it was lights out. So that's gonna be quick. But just said we're still aiming for another leg up, or aiming a little bit higher, right? The bullish momentum is still in. We didn't break anything on higher time frame yet.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings us back down to that 98K level that we were talking about
Yep,
earlier, right? As long as we hold
exactly.
above that, things look great to me. And just like I was saying earlier, if we could get a nice big engulfing and set a new higher high, I mean, that would just be all more confluence showing that, hey, we have a new confirmed higher low on a weekly trend. That is huge, right? And at that point, as that tightens up and we set that new structure, even if it ends up breaking to the downside, that's where you can de-risk a little bit. And, at that point, you have a tight invalidation. So you could even set, what I did with my stop when I sold some Bitcoin was I set a trigger order so that if we broke past my invalidation level, just automatically buy back in, right? So that's one of those times where, let's say we set a new high like this. Sorry, I'm actually going to just make a mess of this. So let's say we do something like this. At that point, we would have that higher high on the trend, right? But if we do something like this at that point, where we end up losing that higher low, that's where I would be interested in looking at hedge shorts up here on the retest if we were lucky enough to get that, right? Something like that. At that point, I would be interested in shorting that. But that being said, it would be, taking profits in this resistance zone or laddering into shorts, however you want to look at it. But then again, if we end up climbing higher, you can always get back into the market and whatever. If you were laddering into this properly and your average entry is somewhere up there, okay, so you miss almost 4% of the move. I mean, if you're worried about 4%, then that parabolic run that everyone's expecting isn't that big of a deal if 4% is make or break, right? So that's one of those times where you can de-risk at resistance retest, for example. And that's what I did last time at around 110K. That's exactly why I did it. But as we get these confirmed new higher low structure points on the trend, then that brings our invalidation up significantly, right? If we, for example, when we had this high and this higher high, I mean, our invalidation was way down here, right? If you were trying to long for some sort of a swing on this little pullback here, I mean, invalidation technically for the macro trend was very far down. Whereas now, as we set a new higher high, we bump that up drastically. And if we set a new higher high, we bump it up drastically again. So I would love to see us just continue staircasing higher, because that makes the end of the bull market a lot easier, right? At least then you can notice when that structure changes. So even if you don't want to flip bearish, at least you can start monitoring your risk a little closer, right? Start preparing for what could happen. Starting to see a little pullback now. Speaking of that, on the shorter time frames, so let's say on Bitcoin, this is the 5-minute chart here. So again, just looking at these higher buy signals here, basically as long as we hold above this pivot here for Bitcoin, which would be about 115.6 thousand US dollars, as long as we hold above that, the trend is still good in my opinion. I could even do something like this. And I would hope to see support kind of kick in somewhere in here. And that would range from really anywhere from 116K down to 115.2. That's basically where I would like to see the bulls step back in for Bitcoin. And that's just on this 5-minute trend, right, guys? That doesn't mean if we lose that, the market's going into the oblivion or anything like that. Just for the shorter time frames. Yeah, so Solana, so even though that little range I was talking about, it hit the first target and that was it. That wasn't really a tradable range anyways, but just showing it for what it is. But that would be one of those times, if I was more interested in shorting this market right now, that's where, okay, we've lost some structure. We lost a confirmed higher low. At that point, I would be looking at pulling a fib and chasing the price the other way. And then looking for shorts if we retest that resistance. Now, again, I'm not interested in shorting this market right now for a whole bunch of reasons. But if I was looking to short, that's kind of the setup that I would be looking for, basically. Trendmaster, still holding support of the Trendmaster as well. So just another reason why I'm not too worried about this yet. Beautiful reaction there. So that's another thing too. Often if I pull up Stuber fibs and if I want to see if the 115 is a valid level to look for invalidation, basically, I'll often pull up the Trendmaster indicator too and see if there's going to be support nearby, like that's just past the 115, for example, or a sell signal for resistance if you're looking at short, for example. But yeah, as this stands right now, I'd really like to see this 5-minute candle in the next 45 seconds close above this purple line, reclaim it. If not, just looks a little weak is all. PENGU, I can absolutely take a look at PENGU after this candle closes, just because I want to see what Solana does here. If it holds above that, I think it's looking, yeah, so that doesn't look so bad. Hopefully it continues to hold that. That's a nice sign that it lost it and reclaimed it really quickly. So again, the trend is still intact. I mean, really at this point, being that we have this higher buy signal way down here, just like that fib that I had mapped out earlier, right? I mean, we could go down significantly and still be holding a beautiful uptrend. And this is just the 5-minute. Just to clean things up, I'm going to outline my box here. And I just want to double check a few things. All right, PENGU. Any specific chart that would have the most data? Is the Binance one, is this all the price history, or is there more somewhere? This goes back to December. I think I recall that being the launch somewhere back then. That one's decent. Perfect. Yeah, so far looks good to me. I mean, we're getting very close to that all-time highs again, so technically we are at resistance. But even on this little trend here, I love to see that we basically turn this range into support. So yeah, as far as a trend goes, looks beautiful. That's on the daily, so that's a lot of strength. The 4 hour, um, so the 4 hour did lose this structure here, but much like what I was talking about with Bitcoin earlier, we set a handful of microstructure breaks to the downside, and we've since broken the confirmed lower highs. And being we have that daily support box below us, I mean, it still doesn't look too bad in my opinion. Actually looks quite healthy. What is the trend master looking like? So there is a sell signal, but to me, it looks like we're trying to hold above that. So if this blue line on the trend master flips to pink and we get a higher buy signal, it's going to be a big green light in my opinion. Does the daily have one? So notice on the daily, that buy signal also lines up with that purple box that I outlined. So yeah, there's some good support building below us. And being this was the first buy signal on the daily chart, I mean, I actually just closed it to bring this up, but I want to show you what Hype did, for example. Go back to the daily, erase everything. Erase some indicators. All right. Like I was talking about Hype with price discovery and whatnot, if we bring up the trend master, notice that when we got that first daily buy signal, it was just a very juicy signal, right? And we did end up breaking through all-time highs. So does the same thing have to happen with Pengu? Not necessarily, but so far that trend is holding beautifully. And to see that indicator lining up with my support box, that's just some good confluence to have, basically, right? So things look pretty good there as well. What's the 1 hour? Basically a double bottom buy signal. Did we break this sell signal? We are just currently breaking this sell signal, actually. What I mean by that, obviously, this sell signal here. Where did we get our pivot for that? That was this wick right here. Let's make this blue so we know it's connected to the blue sell signal. And notice what we're trying to do right now. We even retested that resistance, right? We had it here and we retested it here. We even retested it a third time here. That is a red candle there. So we got our 3 touch points and now trying to break out. So yeah, even on the 1 hour, it looks pretty good in my opinion. Can we zoom in further? There must be some pretty good volume. The candles don't look weird or anything. Yeah, 5 minute, same thing, right? Look at those beautiful, again, we broke the sell signal here. We end up holding that buy trend. We print a higher sell signal and another higher sell signal. We get our buy signal, a higher buy signal, a higher buy signal, and so far we're holding that trend. So basically, even on the 5 minute, as long as this thing holds above here, let me just make a pink line to match up with that. Basically, if it holds above 3.5 cents, things are looking great. That's a nice trend that it's got on the 5 minute, or yeah, the 5 minute, the 1 hour, the 4 hour, the daily. It just looks like it's got a nice trend. Point of control below us. It looks like the bands are starting to spread a little bit. Not a super aggressive spreading apart, but we do have some buy volume coming in the bands, holding the buy signal. They are splitting a little bit, and again, just the fact that we're above resistance, we might pull back a little bit, but I don't know. It doesn't look too bad at this point. So here's one of those times, right? I was talking about the Bollinger Bands splitting apart and getting that breakout. So here's where we saw one on the 5 minute, right? They really opened up here, and then we got to close above the band, and then we just hugged the top side. Yeah, eventually we turned around, but I mean, how long did this end up going from there? Let's say it was one candle. Why Why isn't that hotkey working? There we go. But let's say we uptrended for, yeah, 20 bars, 25-minute bars. So what's that, 100 minutes? Basically an hour and a half off of a signal on a 5-minute. That's actually a pretty good move, right? Because that's one thing that you have to remember too, depending what time frame you're trading. Obviously remember to trade the time frame you're trading. You're not looking for an entry on a 1-minute or a 5-minute and expecting it to run like a 4-hour or a daily. Obviously it'll chop around, but yeah, that was a nice little move from that breakout. I would love to see it happen again. They're really not spreading open all too much, but I do like that we still have this buy trend. What's Troll doing? It's right around that buy trend right now. Mask. Kind of getting to resistance right now, but again, even on the 1 hour, look at those beautiful higher trending sell signals, higher trending buy signals. The Trendmaster's liking this one. The Trendmaster's liking a lot of things right now, to be honest. What do we got going on here? Yeah, hopefully you're all feeling fantastic about the market as well. Hopefully there's been no surprises that have totally blindsided you in these markets or anything like that, you guys. BK in a long on Pengu. Interesting. I haven't actually traded that one myself. I've seen it talked about, and obviously it exploded. But yeah, I just haven't traded it myself. But that looks like it would be a good one to trade. Yeah, I would love to see this turn into a higher buy signal. That would be so beautiful. Anyways, legends, I think that's about all I wanted to go over today. So hopefully you guys did find this stream somewhat useful, if not at least entertaining in some sort of a way. Hopefully at some point I say something that really just kind of helps fit into the missing piece of your puzzle. You know, sometimes all it takes is somebody saying the right thing, and it can even change the way that you look at things with your own strategies, and sometimes that can be quite helpful. I know that's happened to me in the past, so that's the guy I aim to be. Hopefully provides something useful to you guys. So yeah, and also those of you who are watching this on my YouTube channel a little later this evening, if you want access to the MDX ALGO indicators, there's a 10% discount link in the description down below. And with that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Peace.